Welcome to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where real people share timeless ideas. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and in every episode we dive into the philosophies, quotes, points, and life lessons that shape how we live, think, and grow. No matter where you are in life, this show is here to remind you wisdom is everywhere, and it's always relatable most of the times.
Tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Dean Patrick. I'm a writer.
Well, Dean, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's an honor. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. What's your favorite quote, Dean?
My favorite quote? Well, depends on the day. One quote that has been sticking with me recently is from the Gospels, actually, Luke 17:21, which I include in my book. It goes like this in the King James Version. It says, "The kingdom of God is not coming with signs to be observed, nor will they say, 'Lo, here it is,' or 'there.' For behold, the kingdom of God is in the midst of you." And that quote is really, to me, a representation of the fact that heaven is actually a place on earth, right? It's possible to achieve a life of incredible well-being and positive experience in this life. You know, it's actually around us. It constitutes our lives right now.
I would greatly appreciate it if you could give examples of stories to support the explanations. When you say the well-being, what are you talking about? What does that mean?
Yeah. So in my book, God Money, which just came out in April, I write my personal story, a memoir, which talks about, arriving at Stanford in 2014 and launching a cryptocurrency hedge fund while addicted to drugs. And there was a level of despair that I experienced at that time, which, I really felt that life was something that was just something you kind of had to get through, right? And it wasn't until I discovered meditation and Zen spirituality in 2022 that I began to touch in with something that was much closer to well-being, right? And to discover that actually in this life, it's possible to experience tremendous bliss and tremendous happiness with really nothing but just a clear mind and the ability to pay attention to our life and to engage with our surroundings, right? Without drugs, without altered states, just to sit still and to look closely is actually a profoundly beautiful experience. So yeah, that's really the essence of that quote. And, I grew up Christian. I'm no longer a practicing Christian, but it was interesting to me to kind of connect with my initial spiritual roots, which was in Christianity, and to realize that those insights are present in the Gospels and in the Bible. And I just learned them through Zen later in life.
Hey, when you share the quote, one of the things I noticed about the quote is that it's a correction of people that have been they'll be would what's the word? They would be better, would quote unquote live better. The idea of well-being, right? In a different time. Because a lot of people think that of course unfortunate things happen in life, but a lot of people think that if you're not suffering, something is wrong.
If you're not suffering, something's wrong.
Yeah. As strange as that philosophy is, a lot of persons behave that the moment it seems like something's working well, they become scared. They start asking themselves, "What's happening?"
Yeah. You become afraid because it's an unusual experience. You think there's something. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have experience with that in your own life? Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, no. But I've seen persons that like it's there. It's just like you see it's in the actions, in the way they perceive life and all that, and you begin to wonder what went wrong in the first place. But then you just realize that perception is reality.
You realize perception is reality. Interesting. And do you have what is your favorite quote?
What is my favorite quote today? People, I think, recently a guest just shared one, and that is people prefer a familiar hell than an unfamiliar heaven.
Yeah, that reminds me of Tolstoy's quote at the beginning of Anna Karenina, which is, every unhappy family is unhappy in their own way, but every happy family is happy in the same way, right?
Yeah.
Where like the ability, but there's so many ways to suffer, right? There's so many ways to find unhappiness in this life. But there's really kind of a simple formula for happiness, which is kind of you can understand, you can look at a family or any person, and you can hear about their lives, you know, their habits, the way they engage the world, the way they see the world, and you can tell, like, basically without even meeting them, whether they're going to be happy or not. It
Yeah.
depends on whether they're grateful, whether they're engaged in their community, whether they're active in their lives, you know, whether they're not hiding from life, but they're actually active in their life. There's so many kind of ways that we can sort of tell. We all sort of know what it takes to be happy in our hearts, but it's just not always easy to execute, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. When you mention well-being, well-being is what would you say is like the full encompassing uh categorization of well-being? Because there's um physical well-being, there's mental well-being, and
Yeah.
etc. etc.
Yeah, I mean, well-being refers to basically our subjective level of happiness, right? So, you know, I think there's many levels of it, like you mentioned, right? Physical health is kind of the foundation, like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We need
Yeah.
basic food taken care of. We need shelter. You know, without that, it's going to be very hard to experience well-being. And then there's psychological safety and well-being, where you're actually, you know, if you've had trauma in your past, whether you've been abused, you've been to war, you've been sexually assaulted, if there's any kind of, or things much more minor than that, even that are still there, working through them and processing them is kind of another step for psychological well-being. And then there's spiritual well-being, right? Which is really connecting with a higher power and connecting with the interconnectedness of life. You know, I think, and spiritual well-being has really been the focus of my life the last 3 years, where really touching into that interconnectedness is crucial for feeling like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, right? Not just living for my own pleasure, living for my own, you know, desires and self-indulgence. Because I think that's a bad road, right? Everyone who's experienced addiction
Uh,
understands it doesn't work, you know?
yeah. It's good you mentioned addiction, because recently I had a guest, and one of the things he said is that addiction usually is a symptom of something else that is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, anyone who's been an addict, myself included, started using drugs because we felt inadequate, or we felt like we couldn't face our lives. You know, in my case, it was really insecurity, feeling like I wasn't good enough. And the drugs, because I used stimulants, I used cocaine and Adderall. I used drugs that made me feel more energetic, more confident, because that's what I lacked. I lacked confidence. I felt like I didn't belong. You know, I didn't deserve to be successful or even happy. And once I kind of got clean, I had physical sobriety, but I didn't really have emotional and spiritual sobriety. I still had that core issue, which I'm still working on. You know, it's years of
Yeah.
recovery. So.
Yeah. 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 Huh. And the other thing I also noticed that when people say yeah addiction, the first thing they think of is, oh, he's doing drugs, oh, he's into alcohol, and there are
Yeah.
so many other things that people are addicted. People are addicted to food. People are addicted to
Yeah.
other things that you don't they're not quote unquote considered bad for humans, right? They're the actual normal thing that we use, but yet they're addicted to it, and they're not even aware. So when people mention addiction, they don't count themselves as part of people that are addicted. They're like, no, oh, it's for
Right.
people that drink alcohol, people that take hard drugs and all that.
That's right. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest addiction, kind of undiagnosed addiction? Is it food, or is it phone addiction, or what do you see?
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
I think it's fun. Like almost everybody has.
Oh
It's fun, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
I
It's
think that's true.
Yeah, it's fun. And
Yeah.
then there's food too, but yeah, but no, it's not as strong as food. Yeah, but the thing here is that those kind of addiction it's kind of it's more complex compared to the regular types of addiction, because for let's say on the subject of drugs, cocaine, right? If someone has a cocaine addiction, you can say, okay, let's find a way to like I don't know how they do the rehabilitation, right? You might help me here. They try to you put them in an environment where they can't easily get access to the drugs and
Yeah.
series of that. But if you're addicted to food, how is that going to work? Yeah, you still need food, right? Because usually people there's what they do. They call it emotional eating, where when people are sad, when people are heartbroken, when people feel scared, when people feel afraid, they start eating a lot, right? They eat,
Mhm.
they eat, they eat, they eat, just to compensate for that thing that is lacking. And same thing with phones too. And the thing about this addiction is that if you don't treat the underlying issue, what will happen is that you do 1 month you're not addicted. Next thing because they always need something to feed that underlying problem. Let's say it's insecurity, let's say it's lack of confidence, all those things. If those things are not handled and taken care of, what will happen is that even though that's why you see some people they'll stop cocaine addiction, they move on to alcohol addiction.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
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 I thought food is a really interesting example, like you said, because you need food to survive, but if you're addicted to it, you're never going to be able to remove it completely. So, like, but it brings up an interesting point too, because with food addiction, that's such a primal response, right? Like, if you're afraid, eating is a very natural, primal thing to do because you're literally building up extra calories in your body to prepare
yeah.
you for a period of where food isn't available, periods of starvation. And I think a lot of addictions at the fundamental level are an addiction that comes out of a fear of death, right? On
Mm,
some level, right?
mm,
Where even like a cocaine addiction, right? In my case, like, yeah, there was all these psychological reasons. I was insecure, I didn't feel good enough. But I think underneath all that, on some level, it was the fear of death, really, of a fear of not really living my life to the point where I could really feel like I lived, right? Like basically dying without ever really living on some level. That I think is the core of my addiction on some level, and I think the core of a lot of addictions.
yeah. Yeah, it's how these things are connected, and you realize that sometimes what we because the thing about trying to treat a symptom is that a symptom is meant to give you a sign towards the thing that is wrong, right? It's not meant for you to like, let's address this, right? And if you treat the symptom, it will disappear for a while, and then eventually it'll come back.
Yes. Yes. And that's why in my recovery, I talked about the difference between physical recovery and spiritual recovery, right? Because you can go to a rehab program where you're basically in a sort of prison, right? Where they literally won't let you use the drug.
Yeah,
And then when you leave, maybe you
back to
can
it.
still, you go straight back to it, which is what a lot of people do, or you're just like fighting every day to like, you want it. 99% of you wants it. And you're just using that 1% to fight it. But you're really not sober. You're just like forcing yourself not to use it. So
Yeah,
spiritual sobriety is like getting to the point where you don't even want to use it, where you're past the point of thinking of drugs or whatever it is as the right response to your stress. And instead, you have much healthier habits and you're connected to something much bigger and stronger that makes you not even want the drug. Right. And
yeah.
I think that's where I am. Fingers crossed. Right.
Yeah, yeah. When you mentioned this thing, I just realized that addiction is an emotional response to substance. Like in this context, right? The context of this type of addiction we're talking about, right? Not the general addiction. Because now I'm looking at it that if you're not addicted to alcohol and if there's alcohol in the room, like you're like, oh, there's alcohol, and like you're just aware of it that there's alcohol. There's no big deal, right?
Mhm.
There's no emotional response or anything. But the moment you're addicted to it, guess what happens? You're like, oh, there is alcohol. It's like
The whole room
the
becomes the
brain,
alcohol
yeah,
bar.
yeah, yeah, and so it's about removing that emotional attachment, right, from it. So it's sometimes they usually start from, okay, let's remove the bottles first. If the emotional attachment is not removed, the moment you just hear alcohol or any of the famous brand of beer or alcohol that you take, you're like, oh yeah, Yeah, like the brain just start wandering, and everywhere you go, you start noticing bottles of alcohol. Strange, but but you notice you're watching a movie and the character is doing something. Instead of you to like focus on the character, you're like, oh, there's a beer bottle on the top left of this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the brain is yeah, it's amazing what happens when the things we choose to pay attention to, how the brain handles it for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see what you're looking for in the world, right?
Yeah,
Whatever it is, right? If you're looking for sex, right? All you see is people who you want to have sex with, right? Or
yeah.
people you don't. Right? You just label the world based on that. And it's the same with addiction, right? Or with alcoholism, right? I mean, when I was getting clean from cocaine, I would see, I would go climbing, for example, and they use the white chalk, right? And I would
Ooh,
think, wow, I would think like the white chalk looks like Coke, right? Or I would, I use creatine, right? Which is like a supplement. Creatine looks like Coke, right? So
yeah,
I would just think about that the whole time,
yeah, yeah,
like you said.
yeah. And there's like this attraction to it. You just see it, and I'm stepping back to the quote you shared earlier on, and that is it is the the kingdom is in the midst of us, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, and it's amazing how much we've connected this to addiction, because now what we're saying is that the problem is in the root cause is in us, and if we can deal with that, external things out there would know, because it's not like the cocaine, the alcohol is actually holding you or chasing you down, trying to haunt you and say you must take me or I'll, I'll deal with you. It's not like the thing is where it is, and yeah, but it's just that because we we've not dealt with what we need to deal with within. Guess what? We call when we hear it, when we see it, we call we're the one attracting it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's created, right? It's created with our own minds. It's created by, the habits that we built up, right? And that's another thing too, is like in Zen meditation, right? They talk a lot about the habitual mind, right? So as we go through life, we develop these grooved patterns in our brain where we respond in a very predictable way to different things. So like, for example, like, if your spouse or your son or your, mom talks to you in a certain way, you respond in a certain way, right? It's a one-to-one connection. Like your brain is just like wired to respond, right? Same if you have a stress trigger, right? Your boss yells at you at work, the first thing you do is you drink alcohol, right? That's how you've built a habit in your mind to
Yeah,
respond to
yeah,
that. But to break the habits, which you can do through meditation, through, in my experience, psychedelic drugs, which are not addicting, but they're a way to kind of rewire your brain to some extent. Um, you can actually break free from those habits and you can start forming new, healthier habits to respond to those stresses. And that's also the key to recovery is changing the habitual patterns.
yeah. Just remember me that there is no vacuum. There cannot be a vacuum, right? You only switch habits, you switch things, right? You like you replace things, because usually when people are like, oh, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to like you can't break a habit. You just swap it, you replace it with something else. And
Hmm.
so instead of doing that previous thing, you do this new thing when you feel like, because there's a prompting to do that thing, and so when there's that prompting, you then do this new thing rather than doing the previous habit. And this is applicable in terms of goal setting, habits, and all those areas where people are like, oh, this is what I do, this, and they have sets of habits that doesn't really serve them, and they're like, okay, I'm going to stop this habit, and I'm like, no, 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 try and see a way to swap it with something else, right?
Mm-mm.
When you if you realize you watch too much TV and like you don't really have time to really improve and serve and all that. Well, switch it with something else. What else would you switch it? Maybe listening to an audiobook, watching Netflix documentaries on really exciting and challenging idea topics. And guess what? When it's time, when you feel the need to like watch a movie, too much movie, you listen to audiobooks, you read books, you because now it's no longer a vacuum. Because if it's a vacuum, guess what happens? Something it's there will be this prompting. It will just fill up. It will find a way to fill itself up. But when there's already something there, then there's nothing to fill it with. So it just moves.
Yeah. That's great. It's a great point. There's it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very popular in the recovery world, where just like you said, right, you track mind patterns, right? So like, for example, catastrophizing is one, right? So like your boss says something to you like a little bit mean at work, where they're like, hey, like, you didn't do a great job with this. Your mind immediately goes to, my boss hates me. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to become homeless. I'm going to die. Like your mind just blows up into this crazy
Yeah,
spiral.
spiral.
But what you can do with cognitive behavioral therapy is you can catch yourself. You can say, hey, I'm catastrophizing, right? This isn't actually connected with what my boss really said. This is in my head. And it's the same thing with these other habits of these more obvious habits, right? Where if you're watching 12 hours of TV a day, how do you change that into something more productive and more positive, right? You can just
Yeah.
replace it with something like you just said. So
Yeah.
there's
Thank
many,
you.
many levels to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dean. This is one of those topics that we could go deeper and deeper and really expand on, because it's psychology, it's the mind, and it's one of the things that influences everything we do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your quote and just helping me make sense of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the conversation, having me on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can my listeners learn more about you and what you?
Yeah, you can find my book on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. It's called God, Money, Lost and Found in the Crypto Wilderness. And you can go to my website, which is deanpatrickauthor.com.
Okay. And once again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight to chat with
All right. Likewise. Yeah. Until next
you. Yeah.
time.
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.